Well, sorry for that. Good morning and welcome to Trade Setup right here on BloombergQuint Live. I'm Niraj Shah, and it's again turning out to be a very interesting day of trade, particularly if you are a bull, because the global setup is looking reasonably optimistic. Let me get to all of that. First, what the US markets did in trade overnight did really well for themselves, I must say, the US market. So had a good, strong day, aided no doubt by the move in the NASDAQ, but also the kind of earnings that Amazon, Alphabet, etc. put in, maybe just make the futures do well as well in the session today. So that's one thing that all of us should be watching out for when it comes to the US markets. The after earnings, the futures after the markets also are not doing all that poorly. By the way, big announcement: Jeff Bezos to step down as CEO of Amazon. So that's the other interesting bit that happened for some of you or all of you who are probably holding some of the shares in the US markets or the futures through a variety of funds that are available in India. It's a big component of the US markets, that is Amazon, and a development happening there. Anyways, to more news. So what is this having in terms of impact on Asia, right? That's the other thing that we got to ask ourselves. So what is the Asian screen doing today? The last time I checked, it was a mixed bag. Some indices were flattish, some indices were in the green as well. So, well, let's wait and watch how it shapes up. The SGX Nifty would be a determinant or an indication of what we could do. By the way, I must tell you that the cues are so stacked up in favor of the Indian markets currently that even if the markets start off sedate, there is a high probability that the follow-on could be good. And I'll give you my reasons as well for the same. Just keep in mind that we likely to start off about 40-50 points or higher. So it'll be interesting to see how we shape up during the course of the day. Now, to the cues. Now, just think of this, viewers, that hitherto banks have been very, very strong in the pullback, right? 2 days, the bank Nifty has led the charge. Yesterday, IT started participating a little bit, but IT's had a bit of a correction. The focus, to my mind, now shifts to Reliance and to IT, and whether the pullback can continue. Because if banks take a breather, it's necessary for the bulls, for the bullish stance to continue, for Reliance Industries and IT to start participating. IT did a little bit of that in trade yesterday. Let's wait and watch if that continues. And I would find it very unlikely that short-term dips don't get bought into. The markets tried. A lot of people were working with the presumption that from 13,700, if the budget is not robust, we'll go down all the way to 13,250, 13,000. I'd seen multiple technical predictions for the same. And that dip was bought into vociferously. So I would reckon that if there are dips, they'll get bought into. But do watch out for Reliance and IT. I think they need to participate if banks take a breather. Very difficult to say that if that will happen or no. So that is part two. You have to also keep in mind that the flow scenario continues to be very, very robust, and that aids banks, right? So on Feb 2, FIIS bought in 6,181 crores. That's a very large buy number. And typically, viewers, I've told you, as analysis suggests, it's not something that I have figured out, but analysis suggests that when FIs are buying left, right, center, banks tend to do really well. Today, the Morgan Stanley report on banks suggests that you got to prepare yourselves for above average or above cycle valuations for the likes of HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and even Axis Bank. So do watch out. You might well see some more interesting moves in the banking stocks in the near term. FIs on the derivative side as well, they unwound some longs and added some shorts, but keep in mind they had built up multiple large long positions in the previous day. So some of this could be well tactical money just pulling out. The positioning still is on the long side, 71% on the long side, 29% on the short side. So the positioning still remains on the long side. One thing from a trade perspective that all of us need to watch out for is crude oil. And yesterday there was a bit of a bounce because of the output cuts. And I think there's a chart on the Bloomberg terminal which shows that how on technical parlance, WTI is now settled above the upper Bollinger Band in a sign which is showing that oil is due for a pullback. So let's wait and watch what happens to crude oil. It could be a big determinant of what happens to some of the crude sensitives in the session, if not the markets at large. Key results today: Bharti Airtel closed above 600. Very strong patterns technically, but also the kind of buying interest that Airtel is seeing in expectations that the results will be good would be very, very interesting. I would say that if the results are not good, there is a higher case for disappointment. There is a belief that Airtel, because of the subscription numbers that we've analyzed thus far, that the Airtel numbers will be very, very strong. And by the way, there are multiple queues for Airtel, including the MSCI trigger as well, and some court cases. So it could well turn out to be the stock of the expiry of the current series. But yeah, do watch out that the results are today, and what the management says would be very, very important. Some other results include Apollo Tyres, which was up and about in the session, Jubilant FoodWorks, and all eyes out for the same-store sales growth numbers. We will watch out for Indian hotels and the occupancy. Mahindra Holidays and Resorts had 75% occupancy. It'll be interesting to see if Indian hotels has the same. And VIP Industries too would be very, very interesting to monitor how the marriage season and the festive season went for VIP Industries. I think it'll be critical to see what that stock also says. What about companies that came out with numbers and likely to react during market hours today or during market open? Well, I'll watch out for Tata Consumer Products for sure. Keep in mind the budget had the goodwill clause that came in budget when you can't amortize might again impact Tata Consumer Products mildly negatively. But the point being, the numbers, and I'll just bring up the numbers for you. The packaged beverage businesses saw 43% value growth and 10% volume growth. Foods business saw 19% value growth and 12% volume growth. Tata Salt saw double-digit volume growth. Starbucks saw sequential recovery of 92%. Stores reopened for business. I must tell you though, that somebody that I was speaking to yesterday told me in Gujarati ke aakhun gaam chadelu che Tata Consumers per, which means that the street is extremely bullish on Tata Consumer. It was expected that the results will be good. So there's a positioning that has been built on the long side on Tata Consumer. So keep that at the back of your mind. PI Industries, very good numbers, I have to admit. This is compared to estimates that they mildly beat. Actual numbers on the percentage growth is even stronger, but I'm comparing it to the estimates. 1162 versus 1083, so better than the really good estimates. Profit much better than the really good estimates as well. On the EBITDA front, sharply beating the estimated uptick, which was at about 252 crores. So I would reckon that PI Industries could well have a strong show. NEULAND Labs. Now the con call was pretty interesting as well, but I'm just bringing out the numbers and a couple of comments that the management gave in the press release. So the revenue numbers up 21%, EBITDA up 65%, net profit up 143%. Splendid show by the company on a standalone basis. They said that the Unit 3 has started commercial production and is currently shipping 2 APIs from the facility. They expect Unit 3 to be a major growth driver going forward. So bullish commentary as well. The stock has had a bit of a run, you have to admit. It'll be interesting to see what it does in the session today. So that's one mid-cap name that you've got to watch out for, in addition to Ajanta Pharma, which also I thought came out with a reasonably decent set of numbers. Revenues up 15%, margins substantial expansion, net profit up 64%. So, well, it might well turn out to be a pharma day. What might not do well is Vinati Organics. The numbers left a bit to be desired. This is what they did. So revenues up 2% at 223. The estimated number was 259, so much lower than estimates. Net profit was up barely 3% at 64 crores. The estimates were 76 crores. So again, missing estimates big time. On EBITDA margin front, 32%. EBITDA at about 14, down 14% at 72 crores. The estimates were 101 crores. So they've come out with a pretty slipshordy performance in the Q3. Some experts who are invested in Vinati Organics believe that this would be the last of the poor quarters, and then the things would turn around for Vinati. Let's wait and watch if that happens. So that's one more stock that all of us should be keeping an eye out for. And of course, some stocks which moved around on the basis of delivery-based buying yesterday. I will watch out for 2 or 3 of them, particularly IIFL Finance. It's 2 days on a trot that the stock has had massive delivery-based buying. So I would watch out for this one. Look at the delivery percentages for IIFL Finance. Really strong show. Watch out for Finolex after the very strong set of numbers that it put out yesterday. 40% uptake in KNR Construction. Very strong delivery-based buying for second day on a trot. So these are 2 or 3 names that I will definitely watch out for. But IIFL Finance in particular, something's brewing there. Very strong delivery-based buying, 2 days on a trot. And of course, if you are an IPO watcher, then it's an interesting day. There's an IPO opening, there is an IPO listing, there is an allotment for an IPO. So I'll be watching out for all of these as well, as should you, by the way. It promises to be a year of IPOs from an Indian perspective, including LIC, NSE, and some key tech companies coming out with IPOs. So promises to be a red hot year when it comes to IPOs for sure. But today is a big day from an IPO perspective, so I'll be watching out for that too. All in all, the trend is still your friend, so don't try and go against the trend. I reckon dips will be bought into. All eyes on Reliance Industries and IT. We mentioned IT yesterday. It started to move up. Let's see if there is more in store. But the Morgan Stanley report on banks suggests that the street might not be done with its bullish bets on the banking space. Watch out for the private banks in particular. And of course, watch out for NEULAND Labs. Thanks so much for tuning in today to the Trade Setup.